Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures with Aggie brought to you by Coco's Coffee House. Today we have the Elizabeth Williams of the Atlanta Dream speaking with us. She's going to tell us about why she plays basketball and what it was like playing in the WNBA in Atlanta this last year. Please welcome Elizabeth. Elizabeth, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I'm excited to learn a bit more about you. But I guess first, can you just kind of give me some background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. My name's Elizabeth Williams. I play in the WNBA for the Atlanta Dream. I'm currently in my 7th season in the WNBA, 6th with Atlanta. So it's been a little while. I graduated from Duke University in 2015 with a degree in psychology, and I also was pre-med. I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. My parents are actually Nigerian. So I grew up in a household with immigrants. So that's always a different experience, I think, and a very unique one. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. I love it. We're going to dive in. But first, I want to say one of my best friends is Nigerian, and she got me hooked on Nigerian music. And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, it like you are forced to dance when you hear it. Like you can't just sit still.
Definitely. She took me here in New York to a Nigerian festival. Awesome food, awesome people, great music. That was the day that I was hooked. But I love it. Awesome. Okay, let's backtrack a bit. Why basketball? I guess, how did this become your sport? Can you share kind of some of your earliest memories playing basketball?
Yeah, so it was actually by chance because nobody in my family actually played basketball. So again, growing up with Nigerian parents, like basketball wasn't super popular. Like soccer was the sport. So when I was really little, I played some soccer, and then I started getting pretty tall. And so some family friends were like, "Hey, your daughter should think about playing basketball. It's a pretty popular sport. People like it." And that's honestly how it started. And obviously, when I first started playing, I wasn't very good. It was just really lanky. My nickname was Spider just because my arms and legs were just kind of everywhere. But ultimately, I just fell in love with it. And I was always trying to find a court, playing outside. Sometimes my dad would come outside and shoot with me. So yeah, it just kind of grew into this really unique passion.
That's funny. My nickname was Monkey. Not so much Spider. I guess a twist on that.
Yeah.
But it's fun. My dad still calls me Monkey sometimes. It cracks me up. I don't do sports anymore, but I guess I looked like a monkey when I was competing. I don't know, but let, moving on from that, I don't want to be a monkey anymore. But anyway, let's move on to Duke. At what point did you realize you were going to play college basketball and that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think as I started playing more AAU when I was in middle school and started traveling more for basketball, that was when scholarships and the idea of scholarships started coming up. So I think by the time I hit high school, early sophomore year, I had a lot of offers and the chance to play kind of anywhere. And but academics was still really important. So when I was coming down to making my decision and choosing visits, I wanted to make sure I went somewhere where I could find that kind of perfect balance between high level academics and obviously really high level athletics. And so Duke just ended up kind of filling all the boxes, and it wasn't too far away from home. It was within driving distance of Virginia Beach, so it was kind of perfect.
How did you decide that psych was what you wanted to study?
So coming in, I knew I wanted to at least take some pre-med classes, but Duke, one, they don't have a pre-med major, and two, I wanted to make sure that whatever major I chose, I really liked what I was learning. So I think I can't remember what my exact first psych class was, but any psych class that I was in, I was just hooked, and I was so interested in, everyone thinks about psych, they think about abnormal psych and like schizophrenia and all that stuff, but there's also forensic psychology. Like there's so many layers to it that are really unique. So I think that's what I liked about it.
I was one of those people that didn't understand all of the different facets, I guess, within psychology. I did my intro class my freshman year of college,
Yeah.
and I was like, this word means so many more
Yeah.
things than I thought.
Exactly.
It was a learning process. But awesome. Cool. So after Duke, obviously you had lots of fun there. how was the transition out of Duke going from collegiate to professional basketball? I know people always say like, oh, like professional athletes, they're so big. People think that for some reason they just like shoot up or something after college. And then now there's like a new body to a professional athlete. But I guess how was that transition for you?
For me, the transition, it was kind of hard. I think, well, there's the obvious, like everybody's stronger, bigger, faster, taller, right? But then there's also the mental piece and adjusting to finding a role in a team where a lot of roles have been established. You know, you have vets that have been in the league for 6, 7, 8 years, and they understand what they want to do. You know, being in the right places and all of that. Whereas rookies, you still have to find where you fit in within a new system. So I struggled with that kind of early in my rookie season. And then as the season went on and I talked to coaches more and just tried to put in extra time in the gym and just kind of be a sponge to the vets on my team, that's when my confidence kind of grew and I found myself a little bit more.
Definitely. Was there something that happened, I guess, in your first few games or even first season that you learned and you were like totally not expecting that?
Oh, gosh. There's probably so many moments. I remember like one game my rookie year, I was just so nervous. I could barely dribble the ball up the floor. And I was just thinking like, oh, this is so embarrassing. Cause I've been playing basketball for so long, you know, it's like second nature, but then when you're nervous and when it's a bigger stage and a higher level, yeah. I think a lot of times we tend to kind of get tight and nervous. So, but I think as I found more confidence first in practice and felt like I was playing better in practice, that's when in games I started to make more of an impact.
Totally. I guess how did the influence of the older players on the team help you when you got there? Fresh out of college, rookie, young Elizabeth. Who were some of those people that helped you as well, and how'd they get you to adjust?
Yeah, I mean, one of my vets was Camille Little. She played in North Carolina. She played in the league for many years, won a couple championships. So just learning how to practice at a high level so that you play at a high level was one thing that I learned from her. And then even talking to some Duke alums that were in the league, like Jasmine Thomas, Elena Beard, honestly, just like kind of picking their brains about what it's like to be a pro. What are things that I should be doing kind of outside of on the court to grow. So that I think that helped me as well.
Totally. This kind of goes into one of the questions that was submitted from one of my teammates at Adventures with Aggie. But I guess how has the WNBA evolved since you've been in the organization? I know women's basketball is all over the media right now with what's happened in the last year. But how have you seen the sport, I guess, on and off the court evolve in your time there?
Man, the talent level is really, really incredible. When you only have 12 teams and you can have max of 12 people per team, like you absolutely are getting the best players on the floor day in and day out. And I think that's why sometimes people are surprised, like, oh, how is the team that's in 12th place beating the first place team? It's because these are high level basketball players. So on the court, I mean, the talent it's definitely there. And then off the court, I think for a lot of female athletes, they've kind of found their voice and found what's passionate for them, and then been able to articulate that. And so I think our authenticity has really driven us, especially individually, to do, you know, whatever we want to do, but collectively as well, we've kind of found our identity and built off of that.
You read my mind. I was going to ask you about the word authenticity because I heard you say it in our class when you were speaking with Professor Hollander. Can you just kind of speak about what that word means? Because I feel like people throw around the word authenticity and they don't really think about what they're saying when they say it. And I think you touched on this in class as well. But yeah, what does that mean? And I guess how do you use it?
Yeah, I mean, I think simply it's just like knowing who you are and showing it. But I also think it's doing that in times where it's not so easy. So when I think about our protests and you know, supporting Say Her Name and Black Lives Matter when it's not necessarily popular, or thinking back to 2016 when we had players kneeling during the national anthem when it was just not, it was not common. So I think that is what authenticity looks like. It's not only knowing who you are, but showing that in times where it's not always the easiest.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I guess a follow up to that is you kind of touched on, I guess, the athlete platform and how that has evolved as well. I think more athletes or more people are realizing that athletes are people too. Everybody thinks there's some kind of machine beast robot kind of people,
Yeah.
which is totally not true. So can you just speak, I guess, about how you've seen athlete platforms kind of change and how people are using their voices, yourself or other people that you've seen within the sport?
I mean, it's changed a lot. I think the greatest example we've seen is in the NCAA women's basketball tournament this year. The number of players, even coaches and training staff that spoke up about the disparity in the weight room. Whereas I think for a lot of us that are in the W right now, like we knew those issues existed, but we probably wouldn't have said anything. So I think the fact that younger people are more emboldened to speak up is just a testament to a lot of the pro athletes that have kind of stepped outside of themselves and speaking out about any issue, whether it's race, whether it's, disparities, equal pay, all of that.
For sure. For sure. I'm taking a class called Crisis Situations right now in school. It's perfect for this year, right?
Yeah.
So many crises. And we have lots of people. I mean, every week we're talking about the basketball tournament and the disparity that happened there. We're talking about activism and just all of the stuff that has happened. And I never had used the word crises for these things, but it is, and it was in those times too. But yeah, I think I totally agree with you as far as the evolution of the athlete platform and the value that's behind it, because I feel like a lot of times athletes have, or every time I think athletes have way more of a following than I do. And when people that are athletes have these thousands and thousands of followers, right, that means something because people will listen. So I feel like that kind of voice and value of it has changed a lot, which is really cool to see from the outside. But let's talk about activism. We're already talking about it, but I guess, what does the word activism mean when it comes to actually putting it into play? Because this is another one of those words like authenticity. They're directly related, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like people say they want to be activists, they want to be active in whatever kind of situation, but the next step is doing things. And I know I've heard you speak about this as well. So yeah, can you just talk about how you do this and how you are an activist?
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant to call myself an activist because I feel like all I'm doing is trying to bring awareness or speak up about something that's unfair. And then I think people use the term activism when they're talking about organizing, like those things are kind of separate. And when we're in the bubble, we started to understand that a little more. Like, it's one thing to go out and protest, right? I think that's more of the activism piece, but then it's another to work with grassroots organizations and try to change legislation and that type of stuff. So I think sometimes activism and organizing are kind of intertwined a little bit, but there is a bit of a distinction. So that's why I'm always hesitant to say, like, yeah, I'm an activist. Sometimes I feel like I'm more of the organizer. Like I want to work with these groups or educators, something like that.
Definitely. Totally agree. Let's talk about reading the statement, right? What was going through your head when you're about to walk up there, read this statement on national TV? How are you feeling, and how did you become that person that was reading it?
It's funny because in that moment, I actually wasn't that nervous, and I still don't really know why, because like this issue, so this was the evening that Jacob Blake was shot. The Milwaukee Bucks had recently said that they weren't going to play in their game that night. So for the W, like we were scheduled to play at 7 p.m. Atlanta was supposed to play Washington. And so coming in, because we hadn't really talked about anything, we just assumed like we were still going to play, like we were going to read some sort of statement, but still kind of play the game, continue to use our platform, continue to say her name, all of those things. But then by the time we arrived to the arena and people started warming up, and then by the time the Mystics got in, the mindset had kind of shifted to, hey, I think we really need to talk about this. So we literally, both teams went out on the court and talked about it. And kind of in that moment, I was talking back and forth with Terry Jackson, the director of our union, about, hey, there's a possibility that we won't play. I know we talked about making a statement, but we have to kind of draft what we're going to say. And so I think just from being in the conversations and being on the phone with her, I felt comfortable in being able to articulate what was happening that night. So by the time we decided like, okay, we're not going to play, and this is why, and this is what we're going to do with the day, I had like kind of stuff written in my phone already, and I was thinking about the emotions of the conversation. And so it was like, I feel like I should be the one to speak about this. And also being a member of our executive committee of our union, like I was kind of one of the higher ups, I guess, union wise. So it just kind of all fell into place.
Definitely. I think it's so cool to see how much of what the WNBA has done this year and previously is player led. I think that's huge because a lot of times people think like athletes are told what to do, like always, which to a certain extent, like, okay, fine, there are some things that you'll have to do. I get it. But I think that's so cool how the WNBA is player led, and that's kind of, I can see it shifting into other leagues as well. More people using their voices and more people making these decisions that they wouldn't have made years ago. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, and like, I guess the relationship with the players and how y'all came together? I know that picture of all of the players in the gym that hit me. I'm sure it hit everybody else too. But yeah, can you talk about that a bit?
Because I mean, you have to think that normally you play a team, like you see them basically game time, and then you don't see them ever again until you play them again. Whereas, especially that night, by the time we finished our conversation, there were like 6 teams in there. So just the opportunity to communicate and articulate how we were feeling emotionally, mentally, and even physically, because we didn't want to play a game without warming up. So being able to have those tough conversations in person was really powerful and impactful. And I think that's one thing, as much as we had issues with being in a bubble, that was one thing that we appreciated and took away, was the fact that we could actually have tough conversations in person that were really raw and emotional, that in another season we just wouldn't have been able to have.
Totally. A silver lining of the COVID bubble, I guess. But yeah, I heard crazy bubble stories, I guess, from other athletes, whether it's the MLS bubble or whatever kind of bubble it was, of people, you know, you play somebody and like you don't like them for like however long the game is that day, and then you see them next morning at breakfast. And I couldn't imagine living in such close quarters with people that you're not supposed to be super friendly with so all the time. But yeah, I guess that's really good though, that those conversations were happening in person, regardless of the actual gameplay and living with your opponents. I couldn't imagine how that was.
And seeing the referees too, like seeing the ref in the elevator or something, that's just not, you just wouldn't see them.
That's crazy. That's probably they're probably thinking the same thing, I guess. The first time for everyone in that situation. Wow, that's wild. But hopefully we don't have to do that again. Maybe let's try not to bubble again. But awesome. Okay, I have a couple, I guess, Atlanta specific questions. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, not too far. Atlanta's great, been there so many times. But can you kind of tell me about basketball culture in Atlanta? And then we'll move into obviously being in Atlanta with the climate this last year. But yeah, what's playing basketball like in the South? I know it's very different from New York basketball culture versus, I don't know, I guess West Coast basketball. What's it like?
Yeah. I mean, I've been here for, like I said, this will be my 6th season with Atlanta. So it's great. I think the fans definitely appreciate it, because Atlanta is kind of where a lot of the grassroots and AAU tournaments happen. So you find like a lot of AAU teams come to our games, a lot of young people or like young families that want to see where their young player could end up. So I think that's something I appreciate about playing down here. There aren't a lot of W teams around here. So that also makes it a really unique experience playing in the South. So I'm really grateful that I'm in this type of space.
Definitely. Awesome. So how did what you went through this past year, obviously with all of the politics and things happening in Atlanta, how was this unique to you and your team compared to if you were playing, I guess, at really any other WNBA team at the time?
Yeah, gosh. So for so many reasons, obviously our former owner, Kelly Loeffler, was very adamant about being against Black Lives Matter, the political movement, saying we need to keep politics out of sports, yet we should have an American jersey on our flag, or an American flag on our jersey. Like kind of all these things that were just really ironic, and things that we felt like if she could have said this a long time ago, but 2020 was an election year. She's running in the Senate seat. Georgia had these huge races coming up. So there are a lot of factors specific to our team that, other teams necessarily weren't dealing with. But again, the power of the WNBA players and how unified we are, we ultimately ended up supporting Reverend Raphael Warnock in his campaign against our former owner, and just having the support of the whole league and all these players wearing Vote Warnock shirts was so unique in any space. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that in sports, but it was also a testament to how WNBA players think and strategize and operate, because we easily could have been super angry about what she said and, been disrespectful and all these things, whereas we were like, okay, let's be smart about this, let's continue to be strategic and really intentional in how we want to move forward.
For sure. I think my favorite part about this situation, I'm sure it was chaos at certain points, right? But from the outside, I feel like I felt the tension, like I could see it. I heard it on social, or I read it on social, I guess. But y'all all appeared very calm, cool, collected, regardless of what Twitter was saying, whatever was happening. And I think, and I'd love to know if that was due to the unity, I guess, that the players felt, and how y'all knew you were all in there all together, regardless of what people were saying up top and or on social even. But I think that was the most remarkable piece as an outsider.
Yeah, I mean, for Atlanta Dream players, we felt a lot of things: frustrated, kind of confused, disappointed. But the fact that we were able to talk about it as a team, as a staff, and say, okay, let's talk about how we feel and let's talk about how we want to move forward. So, players made a statement, and then we still wanted to make sure that we had an action behind that. And that's when it was really great to have the support of the entire league. So it didn't feel like the burden was only on us to come up with some sort of solution for this.
Definitely. This a weird question, I guess, for you, but how does your degree in psych help you get through all of these situations that you've gone through in the last year?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that one. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily my psych degree, but kind of my personality, in that I try not to get too high or too low. Because I think in a lot of ways people can act really impulsively, and then you don't get anything good that comes out of that. So yeah, I guess it's a little psych, a little bit me, but hopefully that at least helped us to be intentional about how we move forward and things.
Definitely. Maybe it's like you just don't know it, or maybe it comes so naturally to you that you don't know it either.
It's probably a mix of both. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I have another question that was sent in from Adventures to the Aggie community. What is one of your favorite WNBA moments?
My favorite WNBA moment is probably the All-Star game in 2017, my first ever All-Star game. It was in Seattle. Just incredible to be a part of that group, and feel like, wow, I'm actually supposed to be in this league. Like, I can compete with the best of the best. So, and it was just a fun weekend. So I would say All-Star weekend in 2017.
Totally. I love it. Sounds fun. I wish I was there. That would be so fun. But awesome. Just a couple more for you. What are you focused on now? Whether that's on the court, off the court, take it as you want. But yeah, what are your priorities, kind of long-term goals for now?
Well, on the court, our team is really different this year, just because of free agency, because of the draft. So just being, the best teammate and leader that I can, because I'm one of the longest standing Atlanta players at the moment. So yeah, just making sure that people are on the same page. And then for off the court, right now, the biggest focus has probably been vaccine education and making sure players and, their families or households have the information that they need so they can make the appropriate decisions about getting vaccinated and seeing the benefits of doing so. So yeah, that's my biggest focus right now.
You're really good at this. You keep reading my mind. You just go into the next question that I have. I remember you speaking about vaccination education while you were speaking with the class a few weeks ago. But I guess how do you go about that? What are some ways that you're, I guess, putting the word out there if they hadn't heard it enough right now? What are those strategies looking like for vaccine education?
Well, I help set up with our union and our union director Zoom calls with epidemiologists, public health experts, especially like OBGYN, so people focus on women's health, about the vaccine and just about vaccine hesitancy, why it exists, about making sure that people have access, the importance of that. So yeah, setting that up can be, it's like from an email or a DM to a certain doctor. And then one of the calls we set up was with actually a former psych professor of mine who has an expertise in global health. So that was really cool having that relationship. So yeah, just using past relationships that I have to set up or help set up calls with all the players.
Definitely, definitely making the push. I love it. I know I got mine. I'm excited. We're here, but it's spreading a lot too, which is great. I think now that it's available, hopefully it'll be a lot easier in the coming months. But awesome. Let's see. Last question. I end all of my shows on advice. So, what is one piece of advice you would give to younger Elizabeth?
Oh man. I think I would just tell myself to trust my gut. I think a lot of times I almost want to put the burden on someone else. Like, I don't really have to make this decision. Someone else can make it for me. So probably trusting my gut and trusting that how I was raised and the people around me and the education that I have, like I can make good decisions.
Definitely. I think younger Elizabeth would love that advice. Greatly appreciate it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. This has been awesome. You'll be my 100th episode, so that's really exciting.
That's awesome.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you so very much for coming on the show and sharing your story. Stay tuned for more episodes of Adventures with Aggie coming next week.